I've spent over 8,000 hours studying over the past many years at school, and there were 3 essential laws that I followed to get top grades, while also having a life basically. Because what you just saw in the thumbnail, that used to be me. Let me explain with the first law, which is the law of diminishing returns. To set the scene, in high school, I was studying at around 4 to 6 hours each day. This includes times such as on the way to school or in class, where I tried to squeeze in extra hours of study. And sometimes I even tried to study up to 10 hours during weekends or holidays. And I scored in the high 90s for all of my subjects. And this was because I was really aiming for the best marks in my entire country, which I was definitely blessed to achieve that for this country. And you know, that sounds great, good for you. But this came with a lot of sacrifice. For example, sleep, exercise. I didn't really hang out with friends that much. My diet was horrible. And I just remember I was like 58 kilos at the time, like extremely skinny. I could literally like see my ribs without like tensing or anything. Now you might be saying, bro, just manage your time better. And that's definitely true to some extent. But even with perfect time management, there comes a stage where the higher you want to climb in any field, not just grades, the more sacrifices you have to make. And after high school, I thought, look, I already got into a decent uni. There's no need to dedicate my entire life to a number on a piece of paper. But at the same time, my plan wasn't to become like a dropkick. And in uni now, I've cut down the time I'm studying to around 1 to 2 hours each day, if that. And I've been getting around A's, or 85%. And yes, it is like a 10% difference, but for the time that it's freed up, it's definitely been worth it for me. So this is where the law of diminishing returns comes in. The first few hours of study are very high yield. It boosts your marks up by a lot. But then as you study more and more, you get less and less return on your time. Now, obviously the exact numbers are going to be different depending on which part of the world you're in and which grading system you use. But for me, studying around 1 to 2 hours allows me to get around 80%, which is what we consider an A in Australia. And then to go beyond 90% and push to 100%, that takes exponentially much more time. And for me, back in high school, I had to go through every single resource available just to try and squeeze that last 10%. Now, I can already hear people saying, wait. So you're saying aiming for the top is bad? Well, obviously not. You need to work hard and aim high, but it doesn't have to be grades. Everyone has different priorities and goals in life, and it may change over time. So obviously, tweak this advice depending on what suits your own personal goals. And personally for me, the law of diminishing returns meant that I could spend a fraction of my time and still get decent grades, but at the same time allows me to focus more on my own health, exercise, seeing sunlight, punching friends, etc. But the video doesn't end here. I'm now going to offer some practical advice on how to maximize your study efficiency so you can focus more on the things you care about. And this leads us to the next law, the 80-20 rule, which most people know but go about it the wrong way. But this essentially states that 80% of results comes from 20% of the actions. So essentially, I just focus on the 20% of things that are actually important. So any recommended readings I usually don't look at. I mean, as soon as I see the word optional or recommended, you already know that's not happening. Instead, I try to keep things simple and effective. So the only thing I do focus on is I listen to my teacher or lecturer, and then I make a set of non-linear summary notes. Now, young Julian made the mistake of doing the opposite and making linear summary notes. And this is where we just take a set of notes in the order that it was taught to us and looking at each concept in isolation. And I'm not saying this is 100% bad and we need to avoid it at all costs, but we do want more non-linear notes. And this is where we have notes where we shuffle around the ideas, find connections, so we understand how everything fits in. This is extremely important. And so for you watching this right now, I'm going to break this down to the most plain and actionable step that you can take, which is including more visual diagrams in your notes. So things like mind maps, flowcharts, tables, Venn diagrams, etc. And this is essential because first, exams test whether or not you can link two concepts together as opposed to just memorizing some random fact. And second, even if you have to memorize, it's far easier to memorize a visual diagram than it is to memorize a slab of text. It's like how you can recognize someone's face even years later, but probably forget their name. We remember visuals much better than words. And this is why doing non-linear notes works so well, because it's a way of learning, understanding, and memorizing all in one step. So just a few things to note that I've got written down here. First thing is this may vary depending on which subject you're doing. So I remember I used to do a business subject, and for that subject, I took like no notes because it was mostly application. So you're smart, you can decide what is the most important task for your particular case, whether it's notes or something else. And then second, usually making notes has a bad rap, and you see these videos of people talking about how they make no notes during their time at school. Now, after watching these videos, they basically talk about that they make flashcards flashcards instead of notes, which in my opinion are kind of similar because flashcards are just notes but broken down into little cards. So the amount of work you put in is basically the same, so there's no shortcuts regardless of which method you choose. And then finally, some people might be saying, wait, what about practice questions? Didn't you mention in the previous video that that was the most important task? And yes, practice questions are amazing. They're definitely the best thing to do if you have them. But one thing I've been noticing recently, especially in uni, and maybe this is a course I'm doing, but they don't have that many practice exams. And when they do, they're usually from like 10 years ago. So by that stage, they're probably not that useful. So obviously it depends how your course is structured, but for me, summary notes are my best bet. Now, to make sure you're actually maximizing the time that you're studying, we want to implement the final rule, which is the law of deep work. And look, there's a scientific explanation for what deep work is, but the basic takeaway is that you need to focus while you work. And this sounds super wishy-washy, but it is by far the most important thing that I've learned. Because I'm sure we know those people that study for like 10 to 12 hours each day, but what they actually mean when they study for 10 hours is that they were distracted for 6 hours on their phone, did 3 hours of useless tasks like recommended readings, and then for the last 1 hour, okay, fair, they actually did some study. But the point here is that focus is important, otherwise you're just wasting your time. Now, there's gonna be someone in the comments that's gonna be like, but I can't focus, which is bullshit because everyone can focus. People that say that just haven't even taken level 1 precautions yet. And I'm only saying this because I was guilty of this as well. I used to always have my phone next to my computer on loud with notifications popping off. And then while I'm studying, I just grab my phone out of muscle memory because, well, zombies these days. So step 0 to studying is literally just grabbing your phone and putting it in a different room. And then if you're in a loud environment, you may like to wear headphones or earbuds or lock yourself in a quiet place. And also try and print or download all the files you need. So that way you don't need the internet when you're on your laptop. So that way you don't end up accidentally on YouTube procrastinating by watching productivity videos like this one. So if you watch this far, you have a better attention span than 99% of people on TikTok. So to summarize, understand the law of diminishing returns, focus on the most important task using the 80-20 rule, and do these tasks with intense focus. And that is how you're going to outperform everyone.